I've never been on a board. At least I don't think. Maybe I haven't. I've lost memory of it. But essentially, for about 6 years, I coached soccer at a high school. I was the head coach. I had a booster club. It was a volunteer opportunity. I got paid, but I probably put every ounce of that paycheck back into the program. And
Right.
I think what it gave me was more at bats. It gave me an opportunity to be a better public speaker because I had to speak not only to the varsity team, the junior varsity team, but to my coaching staff and to the parents. And so I was constantly having to come up with, what my thoughts were, what our vision was, what our strategy was going to be. And I got those at bats speaking to many more people than I would get to inside of my company. Right. I got the opportunity to, hire assistant coaches, and it was low stakes, but there were stakes, and I got to understand what the hiring process was like. I got the opportunity to, manage those assistants and make sure they were doing their job. I had to deal with, the skipping of the players come to me rather than to the, junior varsity coach. And even worse, the parent comes to me rather than to their child, who then goes to the assistant coach, who then goes to me. Right. So getting to understand kind of the hierarchy of things.
Yep.
I had to learn how to sell things in terms of we needed donors to our program. And it's not like it wasn't a good opportunity. They were doing it because they were being generous, not because they were getting a lot of value out of it. So I think that's probably for the young emerging leaders that are out there that are curious whether they should join the board or not. It's an opportunity to volunteer, but really what you're getting out of it is not that you're going to close this deal or you're going to get this new job. You're going to get more at-bats. And if you handle those at-bats really well, it could lead to the next job opportunity. It could lead to the next sell or relationship, but it's more about the at-bat.
And you don't realize, Khalil. So fundraising is on my list of things you learn, right? And so to your point, in that role you were in, whether it's for shirts or shoes or travel, gas, hotels, van repairs to get a team around, fundraising is fundraising. And none of us want to, nobody necessarily likes it. By the way, my experience is women are much better at it than men are. But the point is, if you care about something and if you're in service as a board or an executive committee or an officer, you're talking it up. And you don't say, oh, that's not my box. I'm not in charge of that. We're all in charge of it if we're trying to make a healthy organization. So let me ask you, we were just, talking about how do you develop. That was two things on my list I've learned how we now identify qualifying board members and what are we doing intentionally to develop qualified board members? And I go back to when I was just an EDPA member, right? I think back in the day, there were board members that just wanted to put it on their resume, to Michael said, right? Or they wanted their logo on a website or a business card and said, I did that, or it looks good. But they just kind of mailed it in. And, those days are over. And I think we had chapters, some really committed people. We had a couple of chapters that were big. I would argue now 8 or 9 chapters, all of them do fundraising in their community. All of them get new people in to experience EDPA at a local or regional level before so I look at the chapters as really that's the recruiting ground for the national board. And the national board is the farm team for the executive committee. So we've created, I think, a structure that this association can live on and be just as strong as it is today because we care about those regional positions and those exposing people to doing more than just, hey, let's call these guys because it's a big company and they'll write checks. It's just and there was a time I give full credit to guys like Bill Haney and Dursey and Dave Wallens at Brewmark and Dan Cantor at Hamilton, who there's a half a dozen companies that just wrote big checks to keep the association going at a time where we didn't have the level of engagement with members we do now. Well, now we do. And I mean, there's as much financial support showing up at the regional chapter level as there is at the HQ level. So that's not an accident. So I think
Mm.
building your bench and your strength there.
Well, you have to build the bench, because if you don't, when someone leaves and there's no one to fill it,
Yeah.
it becomes a big problem. And if you only have all-stars, I think that you're in big trouble when someone leaves, because it's just
Yes.
like at your company, you have a key person who's doing really 5 different roles, but they're so
Yeah.
good they can do all 5. As soon as that person leaves, you're not going to be able to replace that person. You have to find 5 different replacements, and that's tall order.